Hi, everyone. This is Bob Dietrich with the another edition of the ADHD Toolbox. And I'm super excited because we have Seth Perler on the line with us today. Hi, Seth. How you doing?
Hey, Bob. I'm excited. Let's do this.
You know, the best thing I love about Seth is look at that room with all that music. I am a big music fan, so I want a room like that now. So awesome stuff. Anyway, today we're going to talk about some really important things, especially if you're a teacher. We haven't really given too many things about specifically for teachers in classrooms. And if you're a parent or you're an adult, of course, we're going to make this apply to you. So make sure you stick around for this. But if you're a teacher, you're going to want to pay particular attention because we're going to talk about executive function for teachers and how you can make classrooms more executive function friendly. So Seth, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do, what resources you have available online, and how you help people with ADHD.
Awesome. Yeah. So as a child, as a student, I was a student who struggled with executive function. I almost failed out of high school. I, in fact, failed out of my first college, dropped out of my second college before failing out, and then finally decided I had a passion for working with kids and did really well at Indiana University, got an education degree. But I was that kid who was struggling with these things. And as a teacher, I taught for 12 years. I have a master's in gifted and talented education and special ed. And my favorite types of kids to work with were the 2E kids, the kids who were gifted and talented on the one hand, but had a learning disability on the other hand. And the thing about 2E kids is their struggles in school typically revolve around executive function in some way, shape, or form. And when my brain started piecing that together, it was sort of the holy grail for me in terms of giving an umbrella that empowered me to really look at solutions for kids in a new way, with a common language and a common understanding for my own thinking so that I could problem solve. And then after 12 years of teaching, I left teaching to become an executive function coach. That was in 2010, and I started blogging and YouTubing. I have a big YouTube channel that I love, and about 25,000 followers all over the world, probably about 80% parents and 20% teachers, and some others sprinkled in there like therapists and admin and such. So what my life is dedicated to literally today is how do we help these kids who are struggling with executive function figure out what they need to know so that they can really get what they need to out of education and build a great life.
Fantastic. So if you don't know and you don't know anything about Seth, you'll want to know that he is a big executive function guy. So if you're looking for help with executive function, you want to definitely get the information that we have. We have links below how to get in touch with Seth and how to join his summit on executive function, where he specifically focuses on that. So if that's your jam, then you're going to want to check that out. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're an adult, all of it relevant to you. So let's jump in and ask the first question here, Seth. And I guess where we should start is, what is executive function and how does it show up in the classroom?
So executive function, unfortunately, the word executive function is off-putting.
Mm-hmm.
And the definitions that you often find, if you were to look them up online, even from experts that I love and respect what they do, the definitions that they give are really complicated. All executive function means is how we get stuff done. So we're talking about ADHD here, but with executive function, this is how we get things done, how we get to, in this case with our kids, it's typically schoolwork and then responsibilities. Those two things are the broad categories that these students struggle with getting things done. Now, in order to get something done, let's take a piece of homework, for example. You have to do many things. You have to know that you have the homework, so you have some sense of planning or a planner or calendar or some way or that you know what it is. You have to know what the details are. These kids are not detail-oriented, but executive function helps you track the details. You have to manage time. You have to organize yourself. You have to self-start and not procrastinate and get moving on the homework. You have to finish it. You have to turn it in. All of those parts of the process require there are many things that are required in order to execute that one simple task.
Got it. So with regard to ADHD then, how is executive function similar or different to ADHD? Connected.
Yeah, and I think I was going to talk about a little bit about how it shows up in the classroom. Did I neglect that so far?
So let's go there first, and then we'll come back
Yeah.
to how it's similar or different in ADHD.
Okay, so then how you see executive function in the classroom? Everybody has executive function. So your straight A students, they have exceptional executive function. Stereotypically, their executive function is very good, and then you have your students who are struggling with execution, with doing things. Meanwhile, the word executive function, the term executive function comes, the word executive, the word execute, to execute tasks.
Right.
So in the classroom, we have this sort of journey of A to B with executive function. In the classroom, you have a student who struggles with executive function, and you want to get them to point B where they're not struggling with executive function and they have the skills to get done the things that they need to get done. Meanwhile, on that journey from A to B, where they're learning the skills, and there are many of them, this is not, the kids who are getting straight A's, they make it look so easy. It looks like they are just choosing and working harder. That is not the case. They have skills that these kids don't have. So we want to get these kids what I call good enough executive function, not perfect. We're not trying to get them, but it has to be good enough that they can get to that point B where they can get the things done they need to get done. On that journey, the number one most important thing that has to be addressed, that if people don't address and they're trying to help with executive function, they're completely missing the boat, is resistance. You have to address that resistance. These kids are going to be resistant. They're going to be avoidant. They're going to procrastinate. They're going to look unmotivated. They're going to have excuses. They're going to do anything they can to resist doing the things that they don't feel like doing.
Right.
So you have to work with that resistance in a compassionate, empathetic, positive way. So that's the A to B. And then in terms of the teachers, they're also on this journey from A to B. How does a teacher take a class where they have a very neurodiverse group of kids, and the kids who are struggling with executive function, how do they get them to have good enough executive function, the executive function skills to navigate their classroom and be successful? So, and then on this journey, there are going to be roadblocks. So the roadblocks for the kids, there's all sorts of resistance, procrastination, excuses, and lack of skills. And for the teachers, there are other roadblocks that are going to come into play that really interfere. And I'll talk about those when we get in a few minutes. I'll talk about those roadblocks.
Got it. Okay, so let's jump into the question I just asked a few minutes ago, which was how is executive function similar or different from ADHD?
So as far as ADHD is concerned, I don't want people to overthink this because the words can sound very confusing. So executive function describes how everyone executes, or doesn't execute. And ADHD is, in the way that I describe it, and you might describe it a little bit differently, but it is an executive function disorder, or it is when you have ADHD, you have problems with your executive skills. So in terms of that, people will throw around the term executive function disorder. But if you look in the DSM, I don't believe there's any such thing as executive function disorder in the DSM, whereas there is ADHD, which is an executive function disorder. And if you have another diagnosis, you may have another diagnosis that affects your executive function, but it's not ADHD. So, but one of the things that people can do is just look in the DSM. Like you can literally look up online ADHD in the DSM, and it'll give you the two main lists that they're very straightforward that people can look through to get clear on that. But all of those things on those lists are executive function issues.
What does DSM stand for?
The diagnostic, the diagnostic something manual.
Got it.
It's for, I don't use it. It's for therapists. I'm not big on a lot of things like that. I'm big on what works with these kids, but it's the diagnostic manual that will give you the exact how to diagnose, how therapists or professionals that diagnose ADHD do it.
Got it. Okay, great.
Now, both, can I say this, with ADHD and executive function, they're almost the exact same thing, but in order to address ADHD or executive function challenges, both of them need the exact same things as far as I'm concerned. And the way that I laid out these pillars, the first thing, if I'm going to help a kid, if you're going to help a kid who's struggling with this stuff, the first thing we need is the relationship, a secure relationship, secure relating with the child. So for the teachers out there, the child needs to feel secure with you if you are going to be able to get buy-in and get them to take action to start addressing this stuff. So one of the pillars in terms of ADHD or executive function issues is relationship, secure relating. Next thing is they need systems. These kids don't have systems. They're not systems thinkers. They don't know how planners or calendars work. They often say, I hate planners. Planners are stupid. I don't need it. I'll keep it in my head. They don't work for me, whatever the excuse is. They need systems for organization, whether it's their backpack, their locker, their folders, binders, whatever. So they need the relationship, then we need systems. They need skills. They need to know how to use the planner and how to plan, how to organize, how to do homework, how to advocate for themselves. So they need skills. They need mindsets or perspectives because they're dealing with this resistance, the resistance that says, I don't want to, why do I have to do this? I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it in 5 minutes. This is stupid. I don't feel like it. This is a waste of my time. They need mindsets that help them move through that procrastination and that avoidance, and that empower them to take action and get moving on the things that need to be done. And then they also need habits and routines, which, so if they have all these things, but they don't implement it as a habit, then it doesn't do you any good because it's only a temporary Band-Aid.
Oh, lots of stuff to cover with the executive functions. And, so the difference, it sounds like the difference between executive functions and what would you sum up the difference between executive functions?
I guess ADHD is a formal diagnosable disorder, whereas executive function describes how everybody's brain, the prefrontal cortex, the front third of the brain, generally it's the front third of the brain that helps you to execute. So executive function describes how your brain helps you to organize and to manage time and to break down things into steps and to motivate yourself or stop procrastinating, to do the thing that needs to get done, to start taking action, to, if you get off track, get back on track. All of those things are part of executive function. So ADHD is a diagnosable disorder, whereas executive function is what the disorder is having the problem with.
Right. It's kind of a subset. One of the things that could be going on, challenges you could have with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. All right. So what are some of the common mistakes or myths or misunderstandings that teachers have about executive functions?
Okay. So I'm going to go through a handful of really important myths. For all you teachers out there, I was a teacher for 12 years. I love teachers. I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way. Right. It shouldn't, because I have so much respect for what you do. But I'm going to tell you some of the myths because I see this stuff all the time with my clients. So one of the things that I see is that the teachers don't seem to understand, some teachers don't seem to understand the impact that they have on these kids, that these kids are very, even high schoolers, very sensitive beings, very sensitive humans who feel things very deeply. And if there's any sense of shame or putting the kids down, or why can't you just do this way, why can't you just be like these kids, they feel that very deeply. So I think that a myth is that, oh, yeah, I can say these things or use this tone and that kid, it's not going to impact that kid. In fact, it should motivate them, and it doesn't. So I think that that's one myth. Another myth that I think a lot of teachers have never heard of executive function ever. They've never even heard the term. That is not their fault. It's just not in the vernacular yet. But another myth is they don't understand the legitimacy of executive function issues. And so what happens is that when they don't understand that these are legitimate developmental challenges that we can help them with, then the shame comes in. And then they start using tools to get the kid to do the thing that they're asking them to do, they're using tools that don't work because they're based on this misunderstanding. Because what the misunderstanding is about is it a can't or is it a won't? So the misunderstanding is that teachers who think that it's a won't, the kid won't try. They're just not doing their best. They just don't care enough about school. They're just not motivating themselves. They're just choosing to not be disciplined enough. If they would just work harder, if they would just put in more effort, if they could just meet their potential. So that assumes a story, a narrative, that it's that the kid is being willful, that they won't do something. If you flip it and it becomes a can't, and you think, oh, if the kid's not doing this, it's because they can't. They don't have the foundational skills to do what we're asking them to do. If you imagine that narrative, then you are going to take a very different approach to how you work with that kid.
Yeah.
So the won't story brings in a lot of shame, punishment, reward, staying from recess, condescension, little digs, detention, things like this.
Yeah,
So,
I was going to mention that that's part of the training that we do when we visit schools, is helping the teachers understand that these kids, and many times, either don't have the capacity to do what you're asking them to do, or they can't help their behavior. They're literally, they have to stand up. They have to be moving to learn. And when they understand that, then there's a lot more compassion that comes in, and the teachers are able to totally behave differently and approach it differently from the children. So I'm super glad you brought that up.
yeah, and I'm glad you used the word compassion, because that's one of the things that I talk about a lot. We have to really have a compassionate approach.
Right.
And I think teachers are well intended, but they were raised by their parents or their teachers with these beliefs about this thing, and nobody's teaching them otherwise with executive function. So teachers are watching. I'm glad you're here, because there's not a lot out there for you guys.
And same narrative for parents too, right? So parents may think, well, why is my kid acting up? And they got the labels for kids that act up. But when you understand the kid is not trying to act up, if he had his choice, he wouldn't be acting up, but he can't help it. And parents can have that same thing, the same compassion. And even adults that have ADHD is, why can't I do this? Because my brain doesn't have that, so I have to work around it. I literally can't function that way. So you can even have compassion for yourself. So the reframing here goes across the spectrum. So
I'm glad you mentioned reframing too. I could talk about that for an hour or two. Yeah. And that's the narrative, changing the narrative, and the story is reframing.
Right.
So another myth that is exactly related to this is that they think that when the kids who are being successful in class are using their planners, are getting their homework turned in, are organizing themselves, they think that that is a matter of willfulness, that kid just has chosen, they've prioritized it, they've made it important, they're more motivated. But the misunderstanding is that those kids have been practicing executive function skills for years. So when they're in second grade and the teacher says, okay, kids, take this out, put your name on the upper right-hand corner, and you have your kid with executive function struggles or ADHD, and they're kind of tuning in and out like a radio station, you can't quite get clear, and they're not hearing everything, and they don't get their name on the paper, whatever. Like, that kid with good executive function has been practicing for years little micro skills of planning, of organization, of execution. It's not that they just are trying harder. They have had many experiences that kids with ADHD have not been having. So, but that's going on inside the mind. So we don't see that. So that's another myth I wanted to mention. I think another misunderstanding is that we are, all the teachers watching, we're all in different school districts with different cultures in the school. And the culture is often set by the district, the community, and the administration, and of course the teachers. But the administration, most of our schools in this country, I know you have followers that are also in other countries, but in the United States, we have what's called top-down education. So we tend to perceive the principal at the top, the administrators at the top, then the teachers, then the kids. So it's not so that sort of a model or perception or frame, as you said earlier, has its own story. And the thing is that education is a story. We've been doing formal education like this for 150-ish years. And we have all sorts of sub stories around this. So I think the myth is people just saying, oh, that's just the way it is. As if somebody snapped their fingers or waved a magic wand and created what we are experiencing. But each teacher is experiencing something different. If you're at a school in the Northeast, or you're in a school in Los Angeles, or you're in a school in the middle of Texas or Indiana, like there's different vibe and culture in each one of these. So, but we all think that we're in that's the way it should be, or that's the way it is. It's not. We have created this. We human beings have created this story, and we don't have to listen to it. We can change it. We can question it. And it took me years as a teacher. When I had a feeling in my gut that something was wrong, it took me years to really, really, really listen to that feeling and honor it and be like, yeah, this is not right. I do not agree with this policy or the way they're dealing with this kid or this class or this situation. And because earlier on in my teaching career, I wouldn't question. I would just say, oh, that's just the way it is. I'm just the teacher here. I can't do anything. I'm powerless. And then I started saying, wow. And now that I'm a coach, I see all my families coming in. They're telling me everything. So I'm hearing the same stories over and over and over of their experiences in schools, where the kids are disengaged, where they feel shamed by the teacher, not seen. And this isn't, again, all teachers. But you were asking me about myths. And I think the myth is that this is just the way it is. It's not. We have created a story. We get to change it. And it's not going to change unless you, the teachers and people, speak up. And I know it's hard to speak up in your schools. They don't want to hear a lot of this stuff. So another myth is that teachers don't understand the efficacy of homework in general, or the research on homework. The fact that homework is often doesn't benefit anybody. It may, I'm not saying no homework is good, but the way we do homework is you can really challenge it. So these kids that struggle with executive function ADHD are the kids they really, they've used so much executive function. They're exhausted by the time they get home. They have so little executive function to do their homework, and then they're the ones that are dinged for it. Whereas you have a kid with great executive function who can sit down, focus, do their homework, and get better results and appear to be learning more. So anyhow, the research of homework is another myth. So I really encourage you teachers to look at like Alfie Kohn or people who have real research on how beneficial or not beneficial homework is and really question it. Another myth is that if you say something, a teacher says this is what the homework is, the myth is that the kid is, if they're trying hard enough, they're going to hear all the details. And I know you know about this, Bob, with the families that you work, that the kid is going to hear all the details, and that if they cared, they would be responsible and remember what you said and do that homework. These kids, first of all, aren't hearing half of what you're saying. So when you're being very detail oriented and they're very global thinkers, they're not even getting all the details of the homework. But not only that, once they get home, if their parents say, what do you have for homework? And they say nothing, or they say this sheet, and they don't remember what the details were, they're really at a disadvantage. So what the myth is that their communication, that the teacher's communication is clear enough. Well, teachers, it's not. One of the biggest frustrations that my families have that I work with right now is getting clear communications from teachers about the expectations. They look at the portals, they look online, they can't figure out what you're asking the kid to do. They have to trust their kid. Meanwhile, their kid's not good at details. And then they find out a few weeks later that you've updated the grades one day and there's 17 zeros and they don't even know where to start. And then they email you and ask you for clarity, and then you're vague. And I again, I know not all of you are like this, but the myth is that your communication is clear enough. It's not. It has to be. You have to make it so clear for these families. Make it so that they aren't even going to email you to ask you questions, because you already put it out there on your online calendar or on the internet or on the portal so clearly that they really know what to do so they can really support their child.
Seth, before you go on to the next one, is there anything that teachers can do to ensure the clarity or improve the clarity?
Yeah, I was going to get to that later, but I'll get to that right now. So teachers, I'm telling you, a lot of teachers don't understand how long it takes families to look at the portals. If you have a middle schooler who has 6 different teachers, you have some teachers who update every day. You have some teachers who update sporadically. You have some teachers that update once a month. They don't know who's to look at, when to look at it. Nobody's on the same page. I did a video on this. I think, is an admin problem. I think the admin should have leadership and set the expectations for what parents can expect from the school as a whole, just to simplify everything. But teachers, you can use your portals to be crystal clear. First of all, for kids with ADD, you can put PDFs online of what the homework is. These are the kids. I go through their backpacks, and I'm going through a kid's backpack who I'm working with, and they're a new student for me. We start going through the backpack. I'm like, oh, here's this paper. Oh, here's 2 of these papers. Oh, here's 3. Oh, here's 4 of these papers. Why do you have 4 of this one paper? Oh, because I lost it and I asked my teacher for another copy. These are the kids that lose all that stuff. Like, to have it online so parents can just print it from a PDF, you're just helping everybody. Take a picture of it, put it online, whatever. Now, what I have for you, Bob, in terms of how I think you should do this, I put a whole thing here. But basically, if I can find it, I have notes in front of me, people. Okay, so clarity. One thing that you can do is have a hub for you, the teacher, that when any parent emails you, you can say, please click this link. It will answer all your questions. Because my families are asking the same questions over and over, teachers. I know you teachers are getting the same questions over and over. Look, you don't need to answer them. Do it once, do it right, do it thoroughly so that they know. Here are the questions, teachers. And I will have this on the gift, the PDF from me that we will connect you to, that you can download. So you don't have to take all these notes right now. Basically, on your main page, teachers, here are the things you need to address. Hey, parents, every day you should. So what should the parents do? Should they look at the portal? Should they check the kid's planner? What should they see in the planner? Be clear about what they should do on a daily basis. Every Sunday you should. What should the parents do on the end of the weekend before they're getting, and this may not be a relevant question for all teachers, but on a weekly basis, what do parents need to be doing to support their kid? Homework is due blank. When is your homework due? Every day? Every Wednesday? Is it sporadic? If it is, that's fine. Just tell them my homework is sporadic. It's about once every 2 weeks. Whatever it is, be clear. How to turn in homework. Are photos okay? Is turning it in online okay? Is it just online? Do they have to turn in physical papers? Tell parents. They have a bunch of teachers. They don't know. What should they have in their folders? So you teachers, tell parents your child should have a folder that has these things in it, and so that parents know. How kids take notes in your class. Is it lecture? Are there pictures? Do you give them an outline? Tell them about that. Mm-hmm. Tell them where to locate homework instructions. So if they have homework for the night, where do they get it? Meanwhile, with homework instructions, you can set up a private Google Calendar for people in the classroom that you give the link to. That's a great way to communicate with your families. Just explicitly put in the notes what the homework is. How to ask me for help. Here's the big one. Kids will say, and I'm sure you see this too, Bob, the kids who struggle with ADD are going to say to their parents, oh, my teacher doesn't like it when you email them. My teacher doesn't like it when parents bug them. They don't do that. They're going to be annoyed. That is not true. I have not yet, well, there may be a couple, but generally speaking, teachers want to be helpful.
Right.
So but the kid, a middle schooler especially, does not want their parents emailing their teacher because it makes them stand out and look different. And they're afraid that the teacher, that they're going to get in trouble for it. And they don't want to stand out. That's understandable, but that's not the truth of the whole situation. So Answer them, teachers. How should parents ask you for help? Email, phone, sticky note, what? How long should homework take? So teachers, this is a big one, because when you have kids with an attentional issue,
Mhm.
so if you have kids with an attentional issue and they've got executive function challenges, and if they have processing issues that are, especially if they're not, have not been identified. So if they have attentional and processing issues, do you know how long it's going to take them to do a 20-minute homework? It's going to take them 10 times as long as the rest of the class. So tell the parents, hey, this homework should take this long, and then tell them what to do if it takes longer. So if it takes longer, should the kid keep doing it? Should they stop at a certain point? Should they stop at a certain point and you write them an email, or the parent writes you an email or a note? What do you want them to do if they can't finish it in a reasonable amount of time? Because I have a lot of these kids with attentional and processing issues that are really, really, really hard workers, and they'll spend 3 hours on that thing and have no life and have other homework and really be suffocating and not taking care of their nervous system or their health or their self-care.
Yeah.
I'm almost done with this list here. Tell parents about the long-term things that you assign. Do you assign long-term projects, papers, reading novels, or what during the semester? Do you have a syllabus? What links do they need? How often should they be checking the links? And so basically all the questions that you guys are getting all the time, and that pretty much covers them, Bob. But teachers, all the questions, these parents, I can't tell you, I'm hearing this stuff all the time. I've been doing this since 2010, and I still hear all of these things all the time. It's a lack of clarity. You have the opportunity to create something that answers it. And then when they write you the question, you can be like, yep, just click here. It's all there.
That's great. That's great. And do you cover this on online on your YouTube page, your blog, or whatever?
I have so much content. It's insane.
How do
So
we
yeah,
find
I cover everything, but most of my stuff is for parents. And then some of it I'm speaking directly to students. I have a lot of teachers that show my YouTube videos to their classes. So if it's one that's appropriate for a class, but yeah, I have a lot of this stuff online. What I just broke down for you, I don't actually usually say because I'm not usually presenting to teachers.
Got it. Got it. Well, I'm glad you are in this case. It's helpful. I think teachers really want the truth because it makes their life easier. Ultimately, for the little for the time you invest up front, you get results.
It
And
makes teachers' life easier. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then, so we're just about done here. How do people find you, and where do they find you on YouTube? Where do they find your information online?
I didn't get to talk too much about the classroom. Do you mind if I take a moment to do that?
Sure, sure.
I'll
Yeah.
make it really brief. As you can tell, people listening, I have a lot to say. I literally could probably spend 2.5 hours right now going through all my notes that I created today. But let me break down the simplest thing for you in 5 minutes. Teachers, when you have kids who struggle with the ADHD and executive function, these are not systems thinkers. They don't have the skills. They don't have the systems. They have a lot of resistance. They're very overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start. So like I said before, the first thing is the relationship. You really have to check yourselves. This is not to attack anybody. We all have dysfunction. We've grown up with dysfunction. When we are condescending to a kid, even a little bit, they feel it so deeply. They don't want to get them to do what we're asking them to do. That is not working. That pushes them away. What we want to do is we want them to feel compassion, empathy, a part of. There's something called secure attachment. And then Bob and I were talking about polyvagal theory. But basically, with secure attachment, we want to build relationships with our students where they feel seen by us, heard by us, like we've got their back, like we are on their team. So it starts with that. And then we also want to have a very visual classroom, teachers. So your kids with strong executive function, when you explain your systems and where homework gets turned in and where they find homework written on the board or online, those kids with good executive function hear you. These kids, the dots are not connected. So your systems in your classroom, you want very, 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 very visual. In fact, I'll see if I have anything here. Yeah, this is just a simple math box, but it says math. This is my dongle when I go to speak at speaking gigs. It says my name on it. Make sure their name is on everything. These are the kids that lose things, use color coding. Where do they turn in homework? Where can they go for an extra pencil? These are the kids that come into your class unprepared. They don't have a pencil. You don't have to shame them. You can just say, I have some. You know where they are. And then they say, oh, in the supply area? Yep. And then they look in the supply area and there's a giant box that says extra pencils. No shame, just it's a fact. They're going to come unprepared. So you can the point of this one is visual, 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 visual. And your systems and routines in the classroom, when a kid says, how do I do this? Any replicatable system, teachers, you want to have on the wall, printed up, 2 or 3 steps, very simple, so that you can say, no, it's right there, go check it out. Like, I want them to be independent, but you want to help them learn your systems, and you want to scaffold that by having visual things. Again, your kids with good executive function, you say the system once, they've got it for the rest of their life. Great. These kids don't. They will forget it. It will take them a long time to learn it. So we want to scaffold those systems. So visual, 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 visual in your classrooms. Everything you can make visual, color-coded, large, giant labels like this and this, big, giant letters, keep it that way. Another thing you can do is keep their folder in your class or offer to keep it in your class. I'm going to mention 2 things, Bob, that are really important. One is 3-ring binders. So a lot of high schools, some middle schools, teachers will require 3-ring binders, and they'll have multiple sections. And I'm sure Bob can attest to this. Teachers, this is a nightmare for these kids. They do not care to organize paper at this level of detail. Kids with good executive function like the feeling of control and organization. They like it. They actually like that with a binder. These kids don't care. They're only going to do it to please you. Now, if you help them, I don't have a problem with that. But when I have teachers who tell these kids to maintain their binders and they don't support them, it's just, you are setting them up for feeling like a failure and for knowing that they're just keeping it because you check it, not because they care about it. So really question yourself about some of these things. So binders is a big one, Bob. And then planners is a big one. Teachers, these kids don't know how to plan. So I thin out the planners with them, and we really strip it down to get them very simple, manageable. It's a lot of skills. Planning requires a lot of skills. So you can't just say, all right, pull out your planners, write this down. And half of them write it down and these kids don't. They need to be taught executive function skills compassionately, empathetically, patiently, and persistently. So when they don't pull out their planners, you can say, you know what, we're going to work on this. I'm going to help you do this. Let's turn it to the right page. No, we're going to do this right now. Anyhow, I could go on and on, but I think that getting it visual, having the relationship, teaching the executive function skills, knowing that if your kid is not doing it, it's because they can't. And then asking the question, well, if they can't, how would I teach the skill? Because it's not a matter of will.
Got it.
I think that more or less covers a lot of the big issues.
Right. So hours and hours of training in 30 or 40 minutes here on how to help teachers really help their kids. And teachers want to help so much, they give so much, and the kids really want to learn. and some just don't have the capacity. So we can work around it by using some of the skills that Seth talked about today. Seth, you have a free gift for everyone. We have the link listed below. Can you tell us what the executive function for teachers gift is, and how do they get a hold of that?
Yeah, basically I broke down the questions that we went over so that it's very digestible for you teachers. So what it is and how does it show up in the classroom? How's it different from ADHD, and what are the common myths? And then I go into numerous strategies, many of which I didn't talk about, but I'll have a list of all sorts of different strategies you can try on. I will also link to my executive function assessment that I use with families all the time. So you could be thinking about a child in your head and you could just kind of circle the things. You can even give it to your students and have them assess themselves. I'll put that in there as well.
Got it. So if you click the link below, it'll take you to a secret page on Seth's website, and you can download all the information there, and you'll find his social media links You'll find his videos and all sorts of stuff. And don't miss his Executive Function Summit. You can see that online as well.
That
And
is called executivefunctionsummit.com. You can pre-register now, but I will link to that.
awesome. Thank you so much, Seth. Hey, thank you for being on this program. Awesome, awesome information and killer room.
Thank you. I love rock and roll and music and guitars. Can I say, please, teachers, thank you for teaching. We need you. The world needs you. This culture and society needs you. Our kids need you. Don't give up teaching. A lot of teachers leave the profession. We need you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for serving kids in this capacity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And thank you, teachers, parents, and adults for watching this. Remember, this is not just for teachers, but specifically focused on the classroom for teachers on this program. So Seth, thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for watching this edition of the ADHD Toolbox. We'll see you on the next episode.